Last night, our team presented a very high-level plan for reopening of schools to our Board of Education. That plan involves opening schools on August 17th for all of those who choose to come back in person full-time, as well as providing parent agency to keep all of those students engaged 100% online learning through an expansion of our eLearn Academy. So again, a binary choice for families to either participate fully digitally, as is the desire of many in this circumstance to keep their kids with them at home, or for the opportunity to come back.
You know, I want to come back too. Hello there. My name is Scott Hatfield. I'm a teacher in the Fresno Unified School District, and this is my classroom. The man you just heard, Superintendent Bob Nelson, well, he's my boss, and I appreciate his candor. Like Bob, I want schools to fully reopen, and since public school teachers are government agents, I think it's my duty to report back to my classroom when that happens, to serve the students at my school site. But I have questions. For example, the baseline for safely reopening Fresno Unified Schools was clearly mapped out in the superintendent's June 18th press conference. Two key pieces of guidance from public health officials were identified. Students and staff will be expected to wear masks at all times, and the district indicated that schools will work to ensure 6 feet distancing. This sounds very much like a pledge, like a guarantee, and it is consistent with the guidelines given us on June 8th by State Superintendent Tony Thurmond.
We're taking the approach that as schools plan to reopen, that they should plan to open under the most safe conditions that we have information for. And that's why we are advising schools to open with students and staff wearing face coverings and maintaining 6 feet of distance at all times.
Now, I certainly agree that wearing masks and observing 6 feet of social distancing are reasonable guidelines, bare minimums that schools like mine should work to ensure for the populations we serve. But I still have questions about how we can do this safely, because I believe that classrooms like mine are fundamentally unsafe in the COVID-19 era for the populations that we are expected to serve. In this video, I want to show you why I believe that's true. I'm even going to suggest that classrooms like mine, which are fairly common in California, were unsafe before the global pandemic. Let's take a look around. This classroom is used to teach chemistry. Or I should say, it was used to teach chemistry before the global pandemic, and we hope to use it again safely. Now, chemistry is a physical science where we do experiments with, chemicals and glass, electricity and flame. Safety is important. So I've made sure this classroom is well equipped with all the test tubes, beakers, other glassware, and gadgets we need to do science. So the aspect of safety, which is under the instructor's control, meets professional standards. But one thing I can't control is the dimensions and basic layout of the classroom, which was designed for another era. This classroom is old. You can see signs of wear and tear everywhere. The drawers are somewhat beat up. I've taken the handles off as a precaution because they need to be resurfaced. We don't normally allow students back here in this area except when we're doing labs, because if we do, it gets torn up pretty quickly. Instructors can't monitor much of the lab area and student seats at the same time. So this is an important point that I'm going to refer to again. It's an issue that in many California school sites that there are classrooms, not just science classrooms, but classrooms in general, especially older classrooms, in which not every part of the room is suitable for general instruction. Veteran teachers are often able to work around these issues by modifying the curriculum, jury-rigging the physical sitting, adapting it for present need. Classrooms like this are less than ideal. Sometimes there are activities that can't really be done safely, but what we tell ourselves is that with adequate equipment, careful planning, and an appropriate caseload of students, we can teach in these settings and do it safely. But now I ask myself this question. What will happen if I come back to this classroom or another classroom like this and attempt to teach it in a way that complies with the CDC's guidelines on social distancing? Tony Thurman, California State Superintendent of Instruction, addresses it this way.
Right now is a critical time for school districts to really begin to analyze their campus, the footprints of their campuses, and to make determinations about how many students can be safely taught in campus and in class instruction.
Okay, so you all heard Superintendent Thurman. The public schools need to do a self-assessment of their capacity to support social distancing and best practices. I'm going to take that challenge seriously. So, using this handy metric ruler and this bright red tape, I'm going to mark out where I need to position my desk. 6 feet, 72 inches, or if you're a science nerd like me, 1.8 meters apart. So we can have a row of 3 desks here, 1, 2, 3, and another row 6 feet apart from that, 4, 5, 6, and a third row, 7, 8, 9. And you know, there's really only room for one more seat, seat 10, in the next row because the cabinets jut out, but let's pretend that doesn't matter, and we'll just jam 2 more seats in there, 10, 11, 12. I suppose we could even abandon best practice that I mentioned earlier and have the students use the lab benches in the back of the classroom as desks. But you can see that when we do that the workstations in lab are actually closer than feet apart, and so we could only add 3 virtual desks here. So, the maximum that this classroom might hold while being in compliance with the CDC guidelines is 15. And that's if we tell some fibs about the true dimensions of the classroom. Now you might say, well, fine. Let's just have classes with 15 kids. Problem solved. Okay, but take a look at all these desks stacked up on the lab benches. Our custodial staff is getting ready to disinfect the room and wax the floors. They've pulled all the desks up, and you know, there's a lot more than 15 of them. It turns out that in my district, our contract says they can put up to 36 kids in a regular high school classroom. And believe it or not, that's actually an improvement on where we were in Fresno Unified 4 years ago. But you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that classrooms like this were never intended to hold that many students. Why does this happen? Because, beginning in the late 1970s, public school districts in California saw their traditional source of funding for new schools, property taxes, severely curtailed by the passage of Proposition 13. School boards and district administrators responded to this crisis by delaying new school construction, which led to exploding class sizes. Contract negotiations with teachers often involved a corrupt bargain between labor and management, where the unions would agree to higher class sizes as a condition for receiving a wage hike or preserving their benefits. I know a little something about this because I and other leaders in my collective bargaining unit worked tirelessly for several years to reverse that trend. Again, to help you understand where we're at, I've positioned some desks here over the red pieces of tape so that you can kind of see what it looks like. I'm a lot heavier and a lot closer to retirement than I'd like to admit, but the fact is, the students who take this class, the juniors and seniors, they're pretty much about the same size as me. In fact, many of them don't fit into the desk as well as I do because, you know, they're big. One size fits all tends to be the bureaucratic response to things like this. But this is what the reality would look like, 6 feet apart. Of course, this is absurd. We're not going to go back to something like this.
we won't be able to satisfy the CDC guidelines, is the point, of course. And so we won't be able really to go back to a world of regular instruction that satisfies the CDC guidelines. We might go back before we have a vaccine. There might never be a vaccine. At some point we will have to start using our classrooms and our school sites again, and this will never be the solution. Because the number of students that have to be served is too great. This is not a practical solution. Hey, how you doing, neighbor? Hey, how you doing? Yeah, this is never going to be a practical solution. You know, putting pieces of tape on the floor, measuring out desks, and trying to certify that you're going to be 6 feet apart. But if this isn't a practical solution to a crisis, the current crisis, which might last for months, or perhaps years, if this is not a solution now, that means that classrooms like this have actually been a problem for a very long time. Why are they going to so egregiously fall short of the ability to promote social distancing? Why are they so inadequate for that purpose? Because they were not designed for the student populations that they are currently asked to serve. They have already been leveraged in such a way that we can't hardly afford to use them safely. And so when you have this many students sharing an environment with one teacher in closed spaces like this, it's always been a little bit unsafe. It's never been a great working environment for the teacher, and that means it has never been a great learning environment for the students. And we don't have an easy answer for that. I wanted to show this to you so that you would understand. I wanted to show this to you so that you can see for yourself the practical consequences of where we're at. Now, lest you think that this is some fancy schmancy project.
The way this video was made was by taking this iPhone and attaching it to a clamp. This is not professional equipment. This is just a clamp that we attach to ring stands in a chemistry classroom. And I've in turn attached that to a couple of, stools, one stool on top of another. The whole thing is jury-rigged. The whole thing. Just like this entire classroom has been jury-rigged to serve a purpose that it was never designed for. Now, if a teacher tells you that before the pandemic he found it necessary to jury-rig his class for instruction, and if it's obvious that many classrooms can't serve a meaningful number of students with social distancing in force, that should tell you something. That should tell you that many schools, perhaps most, are not going to be able to actually ensure 6 feet of social distancing. I think my district knows it can't actually ensure any such thing. The State Department of Education knows a lot of districts can't. That's why they call them guidelines. It sounds good, but it's impractical to enforce and impossible to implement. There are not enough classrooms, and there certainly are not enough credentialed teachers in this state. Not even close. So we aren't going to be jury-rigging a few classrooms. The entire system is going to be jury-rigged, one classroom at a time, by teachers like me. We will do our duty, even if it means putting ourselves and our loved ones in harm's way. But know this: when the pandemic burns itself out months or perhaps years later, California schools will still constitute a public health emergency, a slow-moving disaster, because we don't have enough classrooms or teachers to adequately serve all of the students we're asked to serve. And that's the real problem. That's the real long-term public health crisis in this state.